Good morning. In today's headlines, will a special master be appointed to review documents seized in the FBI raid at former President Trump's home? The U.S. District Judge is hearing arguments today.
Former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin's attempt to resurrect her political career falls short. A former Democratic state lawmaker defeated her in a special election for Alaska's congressional seat.
The International Atomic Energy Agency is in Ukraine to inspect a Russian-occupied nuclear power plant. The mission is going forward despite reports of nearby fighting.
Tennis legend Serena Williams defeats world number 2 Anett Kontaveit, moving into the third round of the U.S. Open. Williams signaled in August that she may be retiring from the sport. Good morning. Welcome to NTD. I'm Kevin Hogan.
Good morning, and I'm Evelyn Lee. It's the 1st of September, and we're starting into a Thursday today with lots to get to. And first, we start with updates from the Mar-a-Lago investigation. A district judge will hear arguments about former President Trump's special master request today. That's a neutral third party to review materials the FBI took from Mar-a-Lago. The Justice Department filed a motion Tuesday opposing the request. Here's NTD's Jeremy Sandberg with more on today's hearing.
The DOJ said in their Tuesday filing that Trump lacks the standing for a special master because the records in question belong to the government. It also says appointing a special master is unnecessary because the government's filter team has already reviewed the materials and separated anything potentially subject to attorney-client privilege. The Justice Department is also looking into whether anyone committed obstruction and says records were likely concealed and removed prior to the Mar-a-Lago raid. An image from the FBI's raid of Mar-a-Lago shows 6 documents labeled top secret and several marked as secret spread out on the floor of Trump's home. Former Chief of Staff to the Department of Defense, Kash Patel, says the FBI and the DOJ staged a photo op with cover sheets indicating that material is classified. He says the cover sheets amount to little significance, as government agencies use them all the time, and the cover sheets themselves are not classified. Patel says agents violated basic rules of executing a search warrant, as photographs are usually taken of things as found. Trump has repeatedly said he declassified the materials he kept.
What is the DOJ's problem and the FBI's problem with having a special master look at it? What do they have to lose? Maybe the special master agrees with them and says, well, hey, you guys got it right. They're worried about the special master coming in and saying, you guys got it wrong. If it was a righteous investigation, why wouldn't the FBI and DOJ support a verification process?
Trump's legal team filed a motion on Wednesday saying the DOJ's response underscores the need for the court to appoint a special master. They say the DOJ is unilaterally reviewing the documents to decide what is or isn't privileged, and that left unchecked, the DOJ will impugn, leak, and publicize selective aspects of their investigation. They also pointed out an apparent contradiction in the DOJ's response, that it had both already completed a review of the documents and continued to review the documents. U.S. District Judge Eileen Cannon will hear arguments over the appointment of a special master today. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
In a new memo, the DOJ reminds its employees not to talk with Congress. It comes at a sensitive time as FBI whistleblowers allege bias in critical investigations.
Do not talk to Congress. That's the message carried in a Tuesday memo that Attorney General Merrick Garland sent to DOJ employees. The memo reiterates the department's policy of prohibiting communication with members of Congress, citing a provision that says, quote, no department employee may communicate with senators, representatives, or congressional staff without approval by the Office of Legislative Affairs. The provision further adds that DOJ employees should immediately pass on all congressional inquiries. The department-wide reminder comes in the wake of stunning whistleblower disclosures. Republican Senator Chuck Grassley revealed in a letter to FBI leadership this month that numerous whistleblowers have approached his office, alleging, quote, a deeply rooted political infection that has spread to investigative activity into former President Trump and Hunter Biden. That's adding him saying that the DOJ
has a history of failure of being transparent to the United States Congress.
Garland insists in the memo that the policy is not intended to limit whistleblower protections. Meanwhile, Republican Senator Tom Cotton wrote to DOJ employees, "No matter what the memo says, you are protected by federal law if you contact my office to blow the whistle." Reporting by Iris Tao, NTD News.
Sarah Palin loses her political comeback bid for Alaska's U.S. House seat. Former Democratic state lawmaker Mary Peltola defeated her in a special election. And with that, Peltola becomes the first Alaskan native to represent the state in Congress. She's a member of the Yupik Native group. She defeated Republican former Governor Sarah Palin by about 3 percentage points. Palin is widely known for her unsuccessful vice presidential run with John McCain in 2008. Peltola will finish the remainder of Republican Congressman Don Young's term, who died earlier this year. Palin's campaign for the House seat was her first run for public office after the McCain loss. People credit her with opening the door to a more conservative wing of the Republican Party. During her campaign, Peltola ran as Alaska's best shot at keeping an extremist from winning. Palin, Peltola, and Republican Nick Begich will vie in the November general election to fill the seat for the next 2 years. In other political news, Democratic Congressman Charlie Crist announced he is resigning from his House seat. He wants to focus on his gubernatorial campaign against Florida's Republican Governor Ron DeSantis.
Now on to immigration. Texas Governor Greg Abbott sent a bus of illegal immigrants to Chicago on Wednesday and implied there will be more. He announced in a news release that Chicago has been added to a list of migrant drop-off cities. Abbott claims that President Biden's inaction at the southern border is putting the lives of Americans at risk and is overwhelming communities. He says busing out illegal immigrants will provide much-needed relief to small, overrun border towns. He added that Mayor Lightfoot loves to tout the responsibility of her city to welcome all, regardless of legal status. The governor also says he looked forward to seeing this responsibility in action as these migrants receive resources from a sanctuary city with the capacity to serve them. A spokesperson for Lightfoot issued a statement saying the city had received confirmation that about 60 migrants were headed to Chicago from Texas.
The U.S. Food and Drug Administration is now authorizing updated COVID vaccine booster shots from Moderna and Pfizer. Both companies submitted applications to the FDA for emergency use authorization. It's the first time updated vaccines have received what's called an emergency use authorization, or EUA, in the U.S. According to the FDA, an EUA makes it easier to move these medical products to the market. It also may authorize unapproved medical products or unapproved uses for approved medical products. Both boosters combine the original vaccine with one that targets the BA4 and BA5 Omicron subvariants. Moderna's vaccine is now authorized for people 18 and older, and Pfizer's 12 and older. The CDC needs to authorize them as well before the shots can be administered. The CDC's Vaccine Advisory Group is now set to vote Thursday on whether to support recommending the boosters. And on the topic, a new book challenges whether these vaccines are even effective. The book is called Neither Safe Nor Effective and argues that there is enough data out there that would prove it isn't. I spoke to the author to find out more. Joining me to discuss her book is Dr. Colleen Huber. Good morning. It's good to have you, Dr. Huber.
Good morning, Evelyn. Thank you. It's great to be here.
So to begin with, would you please summarize really quick how you came to that conclusion that vaccines are neither safe nor effective?
The COVID vaccines were based on a technology that has been unsafe in the past. They were based on genetic vaccines, which have not gone well. With the dengue virus vaccine in the Philippines, many deaths of children occurred after that. So we knew that that technology was still dangerous and far too risky to use, and certainly to use in human populations without safety testing first. That particular vaccine. But very unfortunately, this vaccine was spread throughout the world very quickly and has had many casualties. The United Health and Human Services website at VAERS.gov reports about 30,000 deaths at this point, just in the US alone, from COVID vaccines. However, we do have evidence that there have been more deaths than that. And another 50,000+ people have been permanently disabled as a result of these vaccines.
And so Pfizer and Moderna, for instance, they were able to prove 95% effectiveness. what do these numbers say about vaccine if, they don't prove efficacy, as I would tell from the title of your book?
Yes, Pfizer did claim 95% effectiveness, but then refused to release the documentation that actually contradicted that. They don't have that efficacy. And now it's not just that the COVID vaccines are ineffective, that they do nothing, but rather they have what we know as negative efficacy, that in the populations that are most heavily vaccinated, they have the most COVID. Even in this country, we see this data. It's hard to get the US government to admit this, but Walgreens did. Walgreens found out that it was dose dependent. If you have 0 COVID vaccines and you took a Walgreens test, you are less likely to get COVID. If you have 1 vaccine, you are more likely to. 2 vaccines, even more likely to acquire COVID. And so it increased even with the number of vaccines. But this is not just Walgreens, but rather this information is coming out of Germany, Denmark, Sweden, Israel, and Hungary as well.
Well, then, with all this, keeping all this in mind, how is it that these vaccines can be made a requirement for the large populations, despite all the downsides and all the unknowns?
I think the pharmaceutical industry has observed that with vaccines in the past, $50 billion invested resulted in $500 billion of pharmaceutical sales to treat vaccine injuries. Now, another $50 billion has been invested in the COVID vaccines. I think they anticipate the windfall of $500 billion more in other words, a total of $1 trillion in treating the vaccine injured. So we know that the vaccine injured are the predominant number of hospitalizations and deaths, but also serious long-term injuries, like over 51,000 permanently disabled, according to VAERS. And VAERS is notoriously and going on for years underreporting vaccine injuries.
Right, so I hear it burns down to profit. We'll have to end it here, Dr. Colleen Huber, but I really appreciate your insights, so thank you.
Certainly, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
A heat wave is scorching parts of the western U.S., and it could worsen over the next week. The National Weather Service is warning of possible record-high temperatures this Labor Day weekend for parts of California.
Cold water, bananas, oranges.
Community workers and volunteers are helping people on the streets stay hydrated and safe.
You'll see people smiling like, yes, got some ice water.
Warnings went into effect in San Diego and Orange counties Tuesday, as well as in Southern California's inland counties. Excessive heat watches will take effect later in the week in the San Francisco Bay Area, Sacramento Valley, and elsewhere in Northern California. Warnings were issued through the Los Angeles region and San Joaquin Valley on Wednesday, where temperatures are expected to hit 115 degrees over the weekend.
Got some cold water, man, on a hot day. The colder, the better, and it's cold and make you smile.
It could get as hot as 126 degrees in Death Valley, California. Temperatures in Arizona reached as high as 112 degrees on Wednesday.
We're going to lose people every year because the heat it comes upon you so quickly that you don't even know what's happening, and then it's too late.
Nevada, Idaho, and Montana are also facing high temperatures. The extreme heat is expected to last well into next week.
And in retail news, Bed Bath & Beyond is closing 150 of its roughly 950 brick-and-mortar stores. That and the announcement of layoffs for about 20% of its staff rattled investors Wednesday. Shares tumbled more than 20% on the news. Bed Bath & Beyond executives tried to calm fears about the chain's future with news of a new financial lifeline. The retailer has secured a $500 million loan, which it hopes to use to stay afloat and retool. But experts say doing an extreme makeover could be a challenge in the current retail climate, beset by supply chain issues and inflation. And coming up, the International Atomic Energy Agency is in Ukraine to inspect a Russian-occupied nuclear power plant. And today, Arizona Governor Doug Ducey hailed economic and educational cooperation with Taiwan. Ducey is the latest U.S. official to visit Taiwan, defying pressure from China. Stay tuned for more right after the break.
At The Nation Speaks, we don't just scratch the surface. We want to go wide and deep. our viewers come away with a much richer understanding of the issues of the day. We really make a big effort to bring on different voices onto the show. We don't just talk to experts and newsmakers, which of course are extremely important, but we also want to hear from the American people. So the people who are impacted by the policies and issues that we're talking about, because what they have to say is just as important to the national conversation.
You're not going to get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff.
Mama!
Like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the right seat.
Got a new house.
I think I finally found a place that I call home.
Welcome back. The International Atomic Energy Agency has set off to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant despite nearby fighting. This, as the second largest nuclear plant in Ukraine, is also in the line of fire. Conditions at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, Europe's largest, have been unraveling for weeks. Moscow and Kyiv have been trading blame for shelling in the vicinity and fueling fears of a radiation disaster. IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi reported that the mission was aware of increased military activity in the area. Russian-installed officials have suggested that the team from the UN nuclear watchdog would only have 1 day to inspect the plant. However, the mission is preparing for a longer stay. Meanwhile, Ukraine's second largest nuclear power station is also facing threats of a Russian attack. Air raid sirens signaling the danger of overflying aircraft or missiles launched by aircraft sound frequently throughout the day.
We have a very important mission to accomplish. As you know, we are going to start immediately an assessment of the security and the safety situation at the plant as it is right now. I am going to consider the possibility of establishing a continued presence of the IAEA at the plant, which we believe it's indispensable to stabilize the situation and to get regular, reliable, impartial, neutral updates of what the situation is there. So wish us luck. We are moving now. Thank you for your interest. It's very important that the world knows what's happening here.
And more news on Russia. An opening ceremony was held in eastern Russia on Wednesday for the Vostok 2022 military drills. The ceremony displays increasing defense ties between Moscow and Beijing. That's amid tensions with the West over the Kremlin's actions in Ukraine. The Russian Defense Ministry says the exercise would be held from September 1st through the 7th in various locations of Russia's Far East and the Sea of Japan. It will involve more than 50,000 troops and over 5,000 weapons units. Russia will engage with troops from several former Soviet nations in the drills. China, India, Laos, Mongolia, Nicaragua, and Syria will also be involved. The Russian military emphasized that it's part of planned combat training that is continuing despite Moscow's military operation in Ukraine. The drills demonstrate an ongoing partnership between the nations and symbolize strengthened military cooperation. As part of the maneuvers, the Russian and Chinese navies will meet in the Sea of Japan. They will practice exercises to protect sea communications, areas of marine economic activity, and support for ground troops in the area.
And today, Arizona Governor Doug Ducey hailed economic and educational cooperation with Taiwan. Ducey is the latest U.S. official to visit Taiwan, defying pressure from China. He met with Taiwan's president today, and during that, Ducey marked a $12 billion investment in his state by Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, also known as TSMC. It's the world's largest contract chip maker and a major supplier to Apple. The TSMC investment is expected to create 2,000 jobs in Arizona and to train numerous future workers in Taiwan.
Both Arizona and Taiwan are global semiconductor leaders, and it is in this industry where our partnership is the greatest. Arizona stands with Taiwan, and we look forward to building on the many opportunities ahead.
In the face of authoritarian expansionism and the economic challenges of the post-pandemic era, we look forward to bolstering cooperation with the United States in the semiconductor and other high-tech industries, building more secure and resilient supply chains, and jointly producing democracy chips to safeguard the interests of our democratic partners and create greater prosperity.
Arizona also plans to open a state representative office in Taipei. Both sides have marked an agreement on cooperation in higher education. The UN Human Rights Office cites possible crimes against humanity in Xinjiang, China, in a newly released report. It also reports serious rights violations and patterns of torture in recent years. The report states that allegations of arbitrary detention and forced medical treatment of Uyghurs are all credible. It also cites cases of sexual violence. Amnesty International Secretary General weighed in on the new report. She said Beijing's repeated denial of human rights abuses in Xinjiang rings hollow. She called the new report further recognition of ongoing crimes against humanity. The UN is calling on Beijing to immediately release all those detained in training centers, prisons, or detention facilities. Researchers say that over the past 5 years, the Chinese regime has swept 1 million or more Uyghurs and other ethnic groups into a network of prisons in Xinjiang. The United States has accused China of genocide. Human Rights Office Director Michelle Bachelet says she was under tremendous pressure both to publish and not to publish the report, with Beijing asking her to bury it. It was released with just minutes to spare in her tenure. She will now retire in Chile.
And in other news, an oil tanker ran aground yesterday in Egypt's Suez Canal, briefly blocking traffic in the global waterway before it was freed. Local authorities say the Singaporean-flagged vessel had become wedged in a single-lane stretch of the canal. 5 tugboats in coordinated operation managed to get the vessel floating again. Technical failure in the boat's steering mechanism likely caused it to hit the bank of the canal. Navigation for other ships passing through the canal has returned to normal. The vessel was part of a convoy heading south to the Red Sea. 2 convoys transit through the Suez Canal daily.
And coming up, Serena Williams defeats world number 2 Annette Kontaveit, moving on to the 3rd round of the U.S. Open. The tennis legend hinted at retirement earlier last month. More on that when we come back.
If you love them enough to suck the snot out of their nose at 4 a.m., then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the-right-seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
The lasting beauty of realistic oil painting. Brilliant, expressive, and inspirational. The 6th NTD International Figure Painting Competition. Guided by pure authenticity, beauty, and goodness. Invites you to join us on a journey back to traditional art. The Gold Award is $10,000. For more details, please visit oilpainting.ntdtv.com.
Welcome back. Fans celebrated as Serena Williams defeated world number 2 Annette Kontaveit and moved into the 3rd round of the U.S. Open. The tennis legend hinted at possible retirement last month. Here's NTD's Costa Menes.
Footage from outside New York's Arthur Ashe Stadium showed fans dancing and applauding after Williams' triumph.
It was an excellent match. Excellent match. I am so proud of her. I knew she had it in her. I just knew that mentally she just had to be focused, serve well.
Serena Gupta, a tennis enthusiast named after the iconic player, says the 40-year-old proved she still got it.
I mean, she's not seeded, but she's done it before and she can do it again. And I think she's really proving to us here that she's still got it. And I don't think she'd enter the tournament if she didn't think she could make it all the way. And the electricity of the fans are really just going to bring her to play her best.
Williams signaled her intention to retire earlier this month, saying she was evolving away from tennis, but never confirmed the US Open would be her final event. Williams will next play on Thursday for a doubles match with her older sister Venus. Then she will face her next singles opponent, 29-year-old Alja Tomljanovic of Australia. The two players have never faced each other. Kost Jimenez, NTD News.
A survey conducted by the CDC found American adults aren't getting enough exercise. It determined less than a quarter of adults are meeting physical activity guidelines. In 2020, only 24% got enough aerobic and strengthening activity to meet federally recommended guidelines. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services recommends at least 150 to 300 minutes of moderate intensity exercise a week, or 75 to 150 minutes of vigorous exercise, or an equivalent combination of both. The survey found that men were more likely than women to meet activity guidelines, but those numbers fell with age. They also varied by race and household income.
Yeah, I don't think I made it to that number.
Well, I try to hit the weights and do some calisthenics, no big deal.
Right?
Yeah, well, I meditate often. It keeps the mind and body in good shape.
Nice. I should do that too, and I don't mean just the gym, but meditation.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You should try it. It helps you breathe better.
Yeah, talking about breathing, humans are one small step closer to landing on the red planet. Oxygen has been created on Mars as part of NASA's Perseverance rover mission. It was produced by the Mars Oxygen In Situ Resource Utilization Experiment, better known as MOXIE. Since testing began in April 2021, MOXIE has produced oxygen on 7 experimental runs and in a variety of atmospheric conditions. In each run, MOXIE reached its target of producing 6 grams of oxygen per hour. That's about the rate of a modest tree on Earth.
Well, I suppose that's one of the first steps to colonization. You need oxygen.
Yeah, and I'm always open to explore new places, so sign me up for Mars.
Okay, go to Mars. Got it on the bucket list.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, we're probably going to have to save up quite a bit for a trip like that, though.
All right, I'll start right now. And that's all for today's program. We'd love to hear from you. You can share your thoughts and your story at goodmorning@ntd.com, so shoot us an email if you'd like. Thanks for watching. I'm Evelyn Lee.
And I'm Kevin Hogan.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Did you know YouTube only keeps selective videos on its platform? So if you want to make sure you get the full picture, just subscribe to our newsletter. Go to newsletter.ntd.com and sign up. It's free.